do the practices. Diet is very important. Even the very great jnanis are very discriminating as to the food they take into their bodies. And even more important are the impressions and the emotions that we bring into ourselves. We're exposed to all kinds of them, but depending upon our power of concentration, we can distill the essence of that which we observed. I talked about the soma, or the ananda, the bliss. Actually, there is soma in everything. The trick is how to extract the soma. And it's very simple. Whatever we are one with, whatever we observe directly, without the disturbances of the thought waves, whatever we have complete feeling and rapport with, that allows the soma to come forth. That nourishes and develops the soma. So Tantra has all kinds of practices. There are many ritualistic type of practices. How many of you practice rituals? Rituals are very important for several reasons. One, rituals are the best way of purifying the psychic air around us. And one of the reasons we have so many troubles in society today is we don't have any of these collective rituals to purify the psychic air. Rituals are also means of embodying the truth or enacting certain cosmic processes. So they can be very important tools. Even a lot of the great jnanis still spend some time every day practicing rituals. Rituals and prayers are also very good to do for the collective well-being. Every day we should do some prayers, some chants for universal peace, for alleviation of suffering all over the world, and so forth. That's part of our social duty. In fact, the traditional Brahmins in India had to do many of those particular types of prayers. But the most important practice in Tantra is the use of different mantras. In fact, I would have to say that if we look at all the different practices in all the different systems of yoga, the most important practice is mantra. It's not asana. In fact, we could define mantras almost as asanas for the mind. Exercises for developing our awareness. Mantra is very essential for bhakti yoga because there the mantra represents the name or the seed energy of the devata, of the god, the goddess, Ishtadevata, the chosen form of the divine that we are seeking to connect with. But mantra is also the basis of all the other forms of yoga. Most of the yogic techniques involve certain mantric energizations. Even in jnana yoga, certain mantras are used, like soham, for directing the mind towards knowledge. Mantra is the main method of putting the mind into a sattvic field. In order to meditate, the mind must be brought to a sattvic nature. A mind that is agitated, disturbed, distracted can't meditate. In fact, meditation is the natural state of the mind. So the real key is eliminating the obstructions to allow this natural state to unfold. And the easiest way to do that is mantra. One general rule in yoga, if you cannot hold to one mantra for at least an hour without your mind wandering off in a significant way, you haven't really developed dharana, or the power of concentration in order to meditate properly. Today the term meditation, I should say, can mean anything. We almost have to develop a new term. In Sanskrit we have dhyana, but here today meditation can mean visualization, can mean prayer can mean thinking, can mean all kinds of things. Contemplation can mean techniques of various nature. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with these things. We just have a deficient language that doesn't have the proper terminology. In fact, another problem we have is the term mind, consciousness. These can mean anything, soul, for anybody. We don't have a terminology for dealing with the higher states of consciousness, the different levels, the different aspects, the different functions of the mind. In Sanskrit, we have some of these terms like buddhi, manas, chitta, and so forth. I know we don't like to introduce terminology, and I try to introduce as little terminology as possible. But for any science, for any profound study, you have to have some terminology. You can't learn medicine without terminology. You can't learn physics without terminology. And particularly if you want to be a yoga teacher, you should know what some of these basic terms are and what some of these basic things mean. I recently met a yoga teacher who didn't even know what Om was. We have to look into this system a little deeper. So to get back to this, mantra is the key practice. In the tantric system, Tantra mainly consists of prescribing certain deities, certain mantras to go along with them, and also certain yantras, which are these geometrical devices like the Shri yantra or the Shri chakra. How many of you are familiar with that? You know, all the triangles. Some of the more typical yantras are just six-pointed stars. We have a meditation form of the deity, which is the physical type form. And then we have the subtle form, which is the yantra. And then we also have the mantra, which is the name of the deity. These are the basis of tantric practice. And then you have certain formless practices that go along with the deity. For example, Kali represents prana, the life force in the highest sense. So what we call the pure meditation practices for Kali involve meditation on the life force, meditation on the breath. So there are these more formless approaches. Or for example, for Sundari, which is the main form of the goddess we will talk about, she represents this realization of the pure self. So a lot of these, what are called the great sayings of Vedanta, like I am Brahman, or everything is Brahma, everything is God. These are meditation approaches for worshiping the goddess Sundari. In the Hindu mind, and in the ancient mind in general, abstract concepts are brought into symbolic or even concrete representation to give them a greater realization, a greater understanding. So that is the basis of tantric practice. I wanted to talk a little bit more about bhakti yoga and devotion. In America, we're very much into all of our childhood traumas these days. We're all trying to connect with our father and our mother and resolve our family issues. When people come to me and have psychological problems, the first thing I tell them is you should feel very fortunate. Because if you have psychological problems, that's usually a sign of two things. One, you have enough leisure in order to have psychological problems. If you had no leisure at all, if you were totally working, you wouldn't have time for psychological problems. And this also means you have some energy to devote to your psychological problem. If you had purely physical problems, or you didn't know where your food was coming tomorrow, you wouldn't have psychological problems. And also, your health must not be too bad. Because if you really had physical problems, the psychological problem wouldn't come up. So I usually say, why don't you take the energy that you've been giving to your psychological problem and direct that towards your spiritual practice?